So I guess I'll start now. Welcome to a digital video effects tutorial on creating a flat style earth rotation. We'll be using motion graphic techniques in order to create something that looks a little something like this. Alright, so there's a whole bunch of different elements coming together. You have lines, you have shapes, you have track mattes, you have gradients, and all these different pre-compositions and lines and all these different things. So just to break down the elements to show you exactly what we got into, besides creating the lines and the earth, by the way, was done from scratch. So we use shape tools to create different things. For example, if we look at planet Earth, Earth is actually broken down into a few parts. We have here the clouds and the planets, the land masses. And what we just simply did is do what we call a mask or a track matte on some of the layers in order to get them to stay inside here. Okay. Also, we have the stars appearing, right? And the stars appearing actually is an animation in itself, doing something like this, and also pulsating like that. We'll be creating that as well. And at the end of the day, it culminates to creating this, right? So there are different elements coming together. So we're gonna start off with this again from scratch, and I'm gonna take you through the steps. Now it might not come out exactly the same way. We could even do a different planet, perhaps Jupiter or Saturn. But essentially, you should be able to get something like this. So I'm going to just create a new composition, right? We'll call this Earth 2. And my preset is going to be HDTV 1080 29.97 drop frame rate. So just make sure your duration is about 10 seconds should be enough, and press OK. Now the first part you want to do is create the background. So what we need to do is add a solid. Simply right click, choose new, and add your solid. Now just pick a color you want to use and press OK. And what we can do also is we're going to add a ramp to it so we get that gradiented look. So hit RAMP and choose generate ramp. And it gives you something grayscale as a default. What we need to do is just change a few settings such as the ramp shape, which will be radial. And we need to change the start of the ramp, not to there, but to in the middle. Gives you a circle there, but you have an end of the ramp as well. And you just need to change that to somewhere further out. You can always click and drag the sizes if you want to, right? So you can create a different size of the ramp. All right, so let's change the start color and the end color, none of which we're going to be animating at the moment, but we can do this. Something like that, and the end color, I'm going to use a dark red, giving us something more like that. Now the ramp uses two colors, and you can always add more colors to it afterwards if you wanted to. You can also animate any of these properties as they have the time vary stopwatch. Cool, so once you have that, we're going to lock that layer because we're not going to play with it anymore. We're not editing it. The next thing we want to do is actually start creating the earth. And then after we finish creating earth, we're just going to add some accents, such as some stars and some wavy lines. So to begin earth is a sphere, for one. So what we're going to be adding first of all is a shape. So there's multiple ways you can create shapes. One of the ways is just make sure that your layers are not selected, and you can just use the pen tool and start drawing, and it will create a shape layer, right? It creates a shape layer right there. The thing about shape layers is the anchor point usually is in the center of the screen. So right there in the very middle of the screen. So you should always be careful about how you create your shapes. For this particular planet Earth though, we could use a ellipse tool and simply draw holding shift, but we want to make sure the center point is still in the very center. So I'm going to do something else. I'm going to right click, I'm going to create a new, and we're going to use shape layer, right? And you can add to your shape layer. So we have this shape layer here, but it doesn't have anything yet, no contents. We're going to use add, whether you click here or up there, just choose add, and we're going to add our ellipse, right? The next one is we're going to also add a fill color, and by default it's red, so we're going to change that to something like of a cyan or a blue, something bright enough. And we look at the ellipse path and we can change the size to something that's more interesting. And that's just one thing. Planet Earth is almost finished. All right. So once you get the planet Earth, what we do need as well is that we need something that looks like planets. Next one, we're going to create a new fill. And the color of that fill is going to be green. So we need a shape that looks kind of like our planet. And I'm just going to be very, very blasé with it. I I can't remember what Earth shapes like, so I'm just going to do something random as best as I can. Right, so I'm going to look at the previous one that we have. We have Earth, and we have land, and we have some shapes there. I'm going to try and stick to something like this. So you have America, you have Africa, you have Europe, right? Earth 2 is going to probably try and follow the same look. So I'm just drawing sparsely, randomly. You know, Earth had this thing, and you had a thing. It eventually went down to make South America. And it's going to be very blocky, right? And we call that America. Let's remove this stroke. We don't want a stroke on our shape here. So we just choose stroke, and rather than changing the color, we can always click the word stroke and make it a non-stroke, right? So that's the color of Earth. You can always change the color, make it bright or purple or whatever you want it to be. Purple Earth, right? So we work with this shape or this color, and let's do some part of Africa. So the thing is, I want to keep all of this shape in one one little grouping here for the content. So we have shape one. We also want another shape, so I'm just going to stick with this content one. We're just going to add to our shape. So if we think about what Africa might look like, it's kind of this large mass that's somewhere over here, and it does, it's big, really big, or kind of looks like it broke off of a piece of South America. We don't know how true that is. It's barely baseless conjecture. So I'm going to manipulate it by holding CTRL just to kind of just give myself a much more interesting shape. Right, big Africa shape usually has this hook thing coming off of it, like so. Right, there we are. That looks more Africa-ish. And then we can add some Asia to it. Not sure what Asia looks like, so I'm just gonna, I know it's a really large mass and stuff, so I think that might work. Okay, so we call that Earth, and it's all together in one shape layer. Now we need to do one more thing. Once we're satisfied with what we have, I just want to run this over just to make sure that it's not going to be showing up um, or being obscured by anything. So once we've got that out of the way, we can always shrink it a bit just to make sure as much of the Earth can be seen as is possible, like so. Right, and then we have also one more thing. We need to create a second copy of this, right? The reason being is because we're going to be doing something that makes it look like it's rotating constantly over and over again. And for that, we need to actually have two copies of this Earth, so that when it moves from one point A to point B, it's going to look like it's going to be repeating over and over again. So for the shape 2, I'm going to expand that. And we have inside contents, we have shape 1, shape 2. We're just going to copy those. Controls, so highlight both of them. Click the first one. Hold CTRL for the second one. Press Control C and Control V. And it seems to have shrunk itself. So what we're going to do is just make sure that the shape or the scaling is fine. Right, so we'll go this here, and that one and this one. Copy, paste. It seems to be getting smaller. So here's what we'll do. Check the shapes, and you notice that the scales are both at that much. Let's leave them at 100 each. Right, so don't have to deal with all those weirdness. And when we actually copy and paste, we should get something that works. So shape 1 and 2, Control C, Control V, they're both exactly the same places. I'm just going to shift this over like so. Right? Is that how the map is? I have no idea. I know I have some bearing straight or something over here. But yeah, we'll just take these two in the shapes, content. Oh, okay. It pasted them inside the same thing. So I'm going to move this shape outside of the shape layer. And that'll be shape 3, and this will be shape 4. Now we get something much more interesting. Alright, so let's actually shrink this down to scale. Right, the whole layer, we're going to scale it, and the shortcut for scale is S. And you're just going to lower the scale on that. And we're going to kind of move it up a bit. And probably scale it just a bit more. Just to make sure the whole Earth shows up when it's going across. Like so. Right, so that might need to come up a bit more. Okay. So we work with this shape first. Double click on this and this. Just move them over a little bit more. Alright, so here's what we're trying to convey. Let's make Earth spin about for, I don't know, the whole Earth is going to be doing a rotation in like 3 seconds or probably 4 seconds. So what we need to do is play with what we call the position of the layer here. So to change position, press P, position, and you're going to set your keyframe at this initial location, which is at 0 seconds. Then navigate with your time indicator over to 4 seconds, and you can just check it's exactly 4 seconds there. And what you want to do is shift this over till it kind of falls within its original location. So just look at it. You kind of have to gauge it with your eyes and say, well, that's what we have there. And I'm going to move the end time for this. Well, I'm going to leave this as is. So we have this shape and we have that shape. Cool. So let's pre-compose this layer because we want Earth to be one collective group by itself. So I'm going to right click and choose pre-compose. And you're going to move all attributes into the composition. I'll call this new Earth. And it becomes a composition called new Earth. And if you double click on it, it only deals with just what's going on with this Earth here. And it actually has its own animation already. Right? So we're going to actually shrink this this layer here. So if you look at it in terms of what's animated, it's just the position that's being animated, like so. Nice. Now, there's another thing we need to do. We want this Earth to look more interesting. So if you look at this, we kind of want to just get this whole green spot to be, if you want to call it masked or matted onto the right place. We're going to use the shape of Earth. So this is layer 1. I'm going to copy that or duplicate it. Control D is to duplicate. I'm going to move that up above that layer. So now I have shape layer 1, 2, and 3. And shape layer 3 and 1 are exactly the same thing. And what I'll just do is parent one layer to the other one. So I'm going to parent this highest layer to shape layer 1. So that anytime I'm moving shape layer 1, shape layer 3 will also move with it. And the same thing with the scaling. Now the thing I want to do is add what we call a track matte. And a track matte can be used to create a mask using an entire layer for the mask. Right, so we're going to go here and choose, we see T for track matte. What we'll do is going to layer 2, and it's going to ask you, based on what's above it, what do you want to use? You're going to use the alpha matte for shape layer 3. And what it does is this. You have something that looks like Earth spinning. The only thing is, you kind of have to just make sure that it's as it is, or it looks proper, or wherever it starts is where it ends. And I'm going to show you the best way to do that. We're going to go to View and choose Show Rulers. And I'm just going to take off this track matte again to no matte. I'm going to show everything. Now the best way I see to kind of get everything to just work together, or you can get to line up everything properly, because these two are exactly the same, they're just duplicates. I'm going to drag out my ruler and just match it up to here. Drag my ruler out and match it up to here. And that kind of gives me a beginning and an end location to where my work is. So when it moves across like so, I can actually now measure it and say, okay, this isn't exactly perfectly lined up. Right, so I'll just take my layer number 2, which is where the animation is on, and just slightly move it across using my arrow keys. Right, so now when it plays back, it looks like it makes sense. Right? Right. All right. So that's done. Here's the next thing though. I would prefer if I could loop this. So we're dealing with right now this, and if I was to play it back from beginning to end, it'll look a little something like this. So I'm going to pre-compose that, and I'm going to turn on my alpha matte. And it looks a little something like this with everything deselected. Right, that plays out all the way. We actually want to play from beginning and end. So I'm going to just add, or I'm going to clip this or trim it. And to trim it, so we have the beginning position, work area start, work area end. If you want to move this to where the time indicator is, the shortcut is B. So if you press B, you can move the beginning time, or the way the work starts. If you want to move the last one, you can press N, based on where the time indicator is. So I'm going to trim it so that this entire composition is actually now 4 seconds. And I could do it like this. Right click, trim comp to work area. Now when we play it back, it looks like it just continues repeatedly. Amazing. Let's continue. I feel like this Africa needs to have some more things at the top. But this is Earth 2. Who knows what happened then? Alright, so that's one part. What if we wanted clouds? Right? You kind of want to have clouds rotating on top of the planet. Right? So what we're going to do as well is we're going to create our sets of clouds. And clouds can be created with almost any shape you want, but because I want this to remain like a particular style, kind of flat and nice, what we'll do is we're going to create again a shape layer. Right, and I'm going to just kind of hide my ruler and my guides. I'm going to right click as well and choose new shape layer. And for the shape, I'm going to use this time a rectangle. Why on earth would you use a rectangle, sir? Well, the cool thing about the rectangle shape tool, you have a particular property called roundness, and I'll show you. I'm going to add also a fill color, which by default is red. We're going to change that to white. We can even make it semi-transparent if we wanted to. But the rectangle tool actually has a property called roundness, which you can actually change how round you want the rectangle to look, right? So depending on the style you really want, you can always change the size, make that look like this. You can even change the width, right? So if you want to go across or down, you can always do this. And we just have something looking kind of like that, right? So we have one cloud. I'm just going to duplicate a couple more clouds. So we have rectangle path here. I'm just going to duplicate this, right? Because we kind of want more. This rectangle path should not be here. Oh, position wise. Hello, Sabrina. So I'm going to move this around, just play with the whole cloudy idea. And we can create more and play with the positioning. Morning. Maybe play with the size. Maybe this should be smaller or larger, depending on what you want to create. Maybe more clouds. I mean, we definitely want more clouds. So we go size, bigger, some bigger cloud somewhere. Position wise, you might want to change it up a little bit, right? So maybe you have a big cloud right here, or even in front here, you can just change the positioning, right? And I'll just play with the height as well. Again, more clouds, right? I'll just play with the size again and the width, and maybe I'll just play with the positioning as well. Or something just like this, right? And we just have one more cloud, just for the sake of having a cloud. So rectangle path, duplicate it, Control D is a shortcut. And we're gonna have this last cloud here. And I'll just move the position on the y-axis down some more. And that looks okay. Right, that's layer 4. What we do want to do, however, is we want to make sure that just like Earth, whenever it moves, it has a duplicate somewhere. So what I'll do, I'm going to duplicate this layer, Control D for this cloud, and just move this across like so. Just so it looks like it overlaps. Right, so it looks like that. Then we're going to put in our rulers, Control R, and our grid. Our guides. So let's just move those guides so that the first part of this cloud thing works and the last part of this cloud thing works, which is like this, from here to here. And what you really want this to do, I'll move this over just a bit more so there's no real overlap, is that you want to do the positioning of it as well, like so. So let's get this cloud to do some stuff. So we want the clouds to move, and we want to just do it once and done. So I'll highlight these two. This I'll call cloud. Right click and choose my, I'm going to pre-compose these clouds. Call them a clouds 2. This here, these shapes, I can pre-compose them and call them earth if I want to, right? So let's call this land as well. Right click and choose a new composition, create a pre-composition called land 2. So we have that done. And for the clouds, right, I'm just gonna have it move from left to right. So positioning is there. For the first part, we want it to have a similar look. So we take these shapes, and what I'm gonna do is parent this original one to this one. Reason being, because I'm animating this one shape, moving from one place to the next place, I want when I'm animating one of them, both of them will be animated. So basically, the parent-child relationship is that if the parent moves, as you can see here, the child moves. But if the child by itself wants to move, the child can move all by itself. Until the parents are there, of course. So that's one. Last one is this. So we're going to just move this and hold shift, drag to the side, and just get it to line up back with the what we have here. All right, so new earth. We have earth now. We have also this one. So for the clouds layer, we do need another shape. We need another sphere, right? So I'm going to press Control G to duplicate that sphere and move it up here. And for clouds 2, we're just going to take this and say alpha matte shape layer 4. And then what you have now is when this plays out, it's going to keep playing back, or it looks like it loops, right? And it's the new earth composition. So let's jump back out to our earth 2. This is what we have here. It plays for 4 seconds and just stops. And we don't want that. What we want it to do is we want to just keep playing over and over and over again. And the best way to do that is this. If I right click here on the layer with earth, we can actually create what we call a time remapping. What time remapping allows you to do is actually manipulate time over time. It's weird. Because this represents the beginning, this represents the end time. If you move the end time closer, things are going to move a lot faster, right? What we want it to do when we do that time remapping is this. I'm going to choose remapping time, right click and choose time, enable time remapping. And what I'm going to do is set a keyframe at the very keyframe at the just before the end. So now we have our first keyframe here, and then we have 2 keyframes. But I don't want this keyframe anymore because that keyframe is an empty one. So I don't need that. What I do want it to do, however, is that this time remapping, I want it to keep looping forever. So I'm going to hold Alt and click on my time very stopwatch and just type in the expression loop, capital O U T, and those brackets, and that's it for me. When that is done, and I play it back, rather than stopping at 4 seconds, the loop out time is going to allow it to just keep playing forever, basically. And that's how you create planet Earth, right? That's how you do the whole planet bit. So we're creating the different elements first before we actually put it all together in one nice composition like we did before. And just to like recap on what we did before, it looked something like this. Right? So we have a few things to do. So I'm going to show you how to do the lines and everything. Oh, I'm going to do the lines part. Yeah, I did that yesterday. But since I'm recording everything now, I'm doing everything from scratch. So this is things. So new Earth looks like this, and we have Earth 2, which is a piece of our composition coming together. So now we have Earth and deep royal blue, right? But inside Earth, you have a whole bunch of different elements that have elements inside those elements, right? And it's really just for organizational purposes. So I guess what I can do is for this particular video, I'm gonna stop it here and then start another recording so you have it in parts, so you're not too overwhelmed by one thing. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the video here. So far what we have is this Earth here, Earth, new Earth, Earth 2, and it just looks like this. You can have that parallax effect because the clouds are moving a lot slower than the actual planet itself. So I'll stop here. Thank you for watching.